What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Do note I was a 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. This is the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and we're having another one. And this gentleman has, in a good way, been around for a while on the Dr. Vibe show, home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. Forgot to include that. And let me give you a little download about Mr. Galen Bingham. They hire him to help their frontline leaders maximize results by eliciting his greatness from their team. Organizations do that, by the way. Inspiring a transformational leadership and personal excellence has been his passion for over 30 years. He has a BS degree in business administration from Southern Nazarene University and an MBA from Rice University. He went on to win awards for leading some of the most recognized brands in the world, such as Imperial Sugar, Kraft Foods, and the Coca-Cola Company. He's also a member of the National Speakers Association, Global Speakers Federation, and 100 Life Design Coaching Network. He's also a technology of participation facilitator and strategic planner. Collaboration strategies from Galen's leadership retreats and keynotes are leveraged by more than 875 corporate executives, CEOs, and nonprofit leaders across the United States, Canada, Mexico, and England. He has written 2 very successful books, Impact, a leadership fable, Your Power to Make a Lasting Difference, and Impact, a leadership fable companion, 200 powerful leadership and personal excellent quotes. And I have a feeling another book's going to be coming out soon, but we'll find out about that. He believes that everyone is designed to be the greatest in the world at something. Our life's mission is to find out, quote, the thing, unquote, and help others find theirs. So he's on our Epic Conversation that he's going to be talking about the 9 steps to become the greatest leader in the world. So welcome back, Galen Bingham. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Fantastic, man. It's always great to hang out with Dr. Vibe in a variety of capacities. I think it's the first time we've gotten together on this platform, man, but it's always great, whatever the venue.
Excellent. Then, so here's a pop quiz. You were wondering what I was doing before we came on live. So here's the pop quiz. Do you remember when you were first on this with Dr. Vibe?
It was probably on Blab, wasn't it?
No, it was even before that. You were on the podcast.
Really?
Yes, back around January 2016.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what I was sort of digging up before we went live to just see if I can give a pop quiz on him. And I knew him then, and that was the days where he even was not even thinking about doing a podcast. Now he's podcasting, he's YouTubing. So I'm very pleased to see that I kicked him out of the nest indirectly, and he's flying, he's soaring as usual on his own. So congratulations on the success you're having with your podcasts and your YouTube telecasts.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, man. I'll tell you, you're kicking me out of the nest was right. I think everything I was doing at that point was with you, under your wing somehow. And so finally you said, stop hanging out with me and go do something on your own, would you please? And so I appreciate you for that, man. But yeah, definitely, we definitely hung out a lot together in the very beginning. So I appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure. And Galen also has one of the, I guess, pleasures that he's one of the few people I've had on the Dr. Vibe show outside of Toronto that has actually met me physically. We did meet a few years ago on via him coming up on a trip to Toronto. It was a great epic event, an epic conversation. I did a video for him to promote one of his books at the time, and he was humbled enough to use my voice in one of his videos, which I was very humbled in regards to have that pleasure.
And absolutely, and you was even able to get your words on the back of my second book, so I really appreciate that, man. And like I said, outside of now that James Brown is gone, you're it, man. You're it.
I received that to be put in such high esteem. Before we go any further, I want to shout out to Claude Diamond, who's another master salesperson. His strength zone is real estate. And Claude, thank you so much for joining on via Periscope, and thanks for sharing it out to your audience. And Claude this is definitely up Claude's alley because he is a great salesperson. So I know that he'll have some takes in regards to this conversation. I know we read a little bit about your background. So what have you been up to recently?
Yeah, just really have been passionate about building out what I'm calling the great leadership retreat. And that's where we're going to take a lot of the things that we're getting ready to talk about now and really build it out with activities, getting really deep into the learning so that people walk away with a really clear understanding as to why they were put here on this planet. What is the thing that they were created to be the greatest in the world at, and how do you activate that? And I believe that that's everyone's responsibility. That's why you are here on earth, to figure out why you were born. And then if you are a leader, that responsibility increases and magnifies, because your job in part is to help other people uh, find that out for themselves, so that you can either leverage that within your organization, or you can help them along their journey. So that's what I've been working on, is trying to build out that retreat, and that's going to be coming here soon. I'm really, really excited about it. Anything I can do to help people crush important goals or conquer stubborn problems, I think this is going to be the venue to do that.
Excellent. And speaking that, it'll be a great success. And if there's anything I can do to get it, to level it up, to make it a great success, don't be afraid to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely will.
Nice. So tonight you've come with a specific purpose. You have this wonderful thought process, the 9 steps to becoming the greatest in the world. And I'd like to know, before we get into the 9 steps, how did this come about?
Yeah, this really came about out of a lot of the executive coaching that I do. Even in the leadership work that I do with corporations, I'm always trying to find that special something in the company's either branding, their product mix, their offering to their customers, and then in working with some of the executive clients that I do for coaching. Again, I'm trying to find what is that special something that they bring to their organizations, to their business, whatever the case might be. And then we start working down this path of how do we leverage that? Because I believe that once you get to a certain age, you're kind of baked, right? All the strengths are there. They might not be as polished as they could be, but they're there. You're pretty much who you're going to be. And then the question then becomes, do you know who you are? Do you know how to leverage that specialness? And when I started thinking about all the work that I was doing, all the questions that I would ask, this event and this process really kind of came together. And someone asked me, hey, do you have this written down somewhere? And you mentioned another book forthcoming. This is going to be that book.
Aha.
A lot of people have asked me, because I talk about the same kinds of things in every interaction. And so many people have asked me, where can I get this captured someplace? And that's really what brought this into fruition.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad we're getting, I guess, a sneak peek, a little advance on the upcoming book. And I always love process, because I always feel that process is a very key part of a journey. And a lot of times ideas fail or don't get to their full fruition, but there's not a process in place. So you've received a lot of requests from people. So what was your next step to making this a reality?
Yeah, almost everything that I do, I videotape or I audio record. And so when I started reflecting on the comments that I was getting after the session, after each of my sessions, I cataloged all of those, and I started noticing the same types of comments. And that prompted me to want to review what I presented, because very often you're in the moment, or at least I'm in the moment. And much like an athlete on the field or on the court, I don't necessarily always know what it is that I'm doing. I'm just engaged in the moment. And when I went back and reviewed some of those discussions, there seemed to be a common theme to the types of dialogues that we were having. Although I may be in front of hundreds of people, I always try to create a one-on-one conversation. And so when I started looking at those one-on-one conversations, it was all about trying to drive deeper into, number one, who are you? Not who your parents say you're supposed to be, not who the organizations say the organization says that you're supposed to be, not your title, but what are those values that are true to you that you can't be convinced otherwise? And then how do we magnify that? How do we apply that to whatever it is that you were designed to be? And that was really kind of the origin of all of this. And like I said, I finally got to a point where I started making this the key focus of my discussions, as opposed to just something that would come up in the conversation.
Okay. Before we get to that, you've sort of given the giveaway a little bit of the first one already, but before we get right into it full-fledged, how long did it take from the original thought process to it actually becoming a finished document?
I think I played around with this for about 9 months. And again, these concepts constantly come into conversation all the time anyway. But it was probably about 9 months until I finally said, hey, let's go ahead and package this into one place. Let's build out some tools. Let's make this the center of the discussion rather than just a side conversation. Let's make this a main course rather than a side meal. And that's where we are now. Like I said, this is really kind of taken on a life of its own. I think it was always there, and I was trying to create something else.
Okay, well, let's start off. Number one, decide. Go for it.
Yeah. So really, I'm going to take a step back. Just
Okay.
the idea of trying to be the greatest in the world. You asked me about the origin of this. This really came from a personal experience that I had in my corporate job. I was in a corporate role, and my entire life's career path was about becoming a vice president of sales, executive vice president, where I'm leading an entire sales organization, and thousands of people waiting on my utterance before they could move, that kind of thing. And that was the path. And the organization that I was working for moved me into a training role where I was going to be training the organization. And that was supposed to be the gateway to all the magical things that I ever wanted to do afterwards. And about 6 months into the job, I felt like this was a derailer, that this was not going to allow me to become the vice president of sales. And I had some trepidation about it. So I talked to some of my mentors. And one mentor in particular said, hey, Galen, when I hear you talk about the business, that the thought that you could be a vice president of sales, right? And could you be a good VP of sales? Sure, you probably could be good. But when I hear you talk about developing people and having them achieve goals that they didn't believe were possible, when I see you talk about developing individuals or developing teams and creating tools that will unlock their magic, there's a sparkle there that I don't see when I hear you talk about the business. And he said, well, so my advice to you is you have to make a decision. You can either pursue this path that ultimately you probably can only be good at, or you can take a path and take a shot at being the greatest in the world at something. And I'd never heard anyone talk about this notion of someone being the greatest in the world at something. I mean, think about that, the absolute greatest in the world. And that haunted me for about 3 months. And after being in that role for 18 months, my commitment was up. And they asked me, okay, so you ready to start interviewing for VP jobs? And I turned the organization down. I said, I don't even want to interview. I had fallen in love with and owned my passion for developing people and developing organizations. And like I said, even since then, this phrase of being the greatest in the world at something just really captivated me. So that's really what this is about. That's the origin of it. And the first step, if you're going to be the greatest in the world at anything, is that you have to decide. You have to make a decision. You can be good by happenstance. Greatness requires a decision. And so you have to decide that average is not enough. You have to decide, number one, who you are, why you're here, where you're going, and the kind of people that you are going to need along the way, and the kind of people that you might be able to help along the way. So it really starts with making a decision. You can't just roll out of bed one day and be great. You have to make a choice. And so the last part of that decision is really a byproduct of making a decision. It's when you start involving your passion. When you decide that this is who I am, this is why I was created, and I'm going to throw everything into understanding and learning this space, there's a passion that comes across, and people are able to tell. If anyone has to ask you, hey, what is it that you do? Then you're not living into your passion. So let's take you, for example, Dr. Vibe. There is no question in my mind that you are about having epic conversations.
Yep.
Regardless of the platform,
yep.
Regardless of the medium, right? Regardless of whether you're in front of thousands of people or whether it's one-on-one, you're always looking to have impactful conversations, and you always look for an opportunity to turn up that conversation at least 2 or 3 notches.
Yep.
And that came from you making a decision that this is who you are and this is what you want. This is who you want it to be. And so that's the first step. Go ahead.
It's interesting. A few quick things. Claude Diamond is saying this is a great conversation, and I feel definitely when he approves, I'm in good state, because if I had Galen and Claude as my sales marketing trainers, I wouldn't have an issue in the world, and they've been good enough as it is already. But that is really good. I'm going to take something from what you're saying. Am I understand you're saying questioning yourself, or someone should question themselves? Do I want to be good at something, or do I want to be great at something?
Yeah. Well, do you want to get involved with something where you only have an opportunity to be good, right? That is the maximum that you will ever reach, is being good or being average, right? There are some people that are in fields, they are in jobs that the best that they're ever going to be is average. That's the top. And you can play in that space. I mean, paycheck is good. There's nothing wrong with having an average life if that's all you want. But what the VP was telling me, and what I've locked onto, is find that magic that's going to allow you to be the greatest in the world. Malcolm Gladwell popularized this notion. He didn't create it, but he popularized this notion that it takes 10,000 hours to create mastery in any field. Well, I'm going to suggest to you that to spend 10,000 hours doing something that you don't really love could be a definition of hell.
Oh, gosh, yes.
So find the thing that you love where it doesn't feel like I'm spending 10,000 hours, right? You may have spent 8,000 hours doing this thing already, and you wouldn't know it. You'd have to literally think about it. You'd have to literally add up, because the time has gone by and you don't know where it's gone. And that's the thing that's going to motivate you to do the kind of work that you need to do in order to be the greatest in the world at whatever it is that you're striving for.
Excellent. Yeah, I fully agree. And whenever I hear that Malcolm Gladwell put about the 10,000 hours, saying I'm probably getting close to that.
Yeah,
really. And I think I'm thinking I'm getting pretty close to that, because if I've done over 2,000 of these, and every one I've done, I've listened to before I've edited and put it live, and then all the work behind it, the research, we're getting close.
Yeah, and then you probably study it so that the next one you do, you're building off of, wow, I did that and it worked out, and this question didn't connect the way I thought, so I'm going to change that question just a little bit. So although you may have 2,000 hours of screen time, there's probably another 4 or 5 hours.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Well, if I wasn't bald before I started this journey, I would have been bald because of this journey. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So let's go to number 2. Want to.
Yeah. So this is kind of born out of a conversation that I had with a colleague, and we were actually talking about our kids. And he was saying that, his kid has all this talent in the world, but he doesn't have want to. He doesn't have a drive. He doesn't have a desire to do these things that they're talented in. And I've taken that and I've turned that into kind of a step in this process. I mean, we can do anything that we have to do, right? There are several things in your day that you have to do, whether you want to or not, especially if you work for a corporation, if you work for a company, if you work for someone. Whether you like it or not, you got to do expense reports, right? Whether you like it or not, you've got to turn in this analysis, right? So that's not the question, right? The question becomes, what are those things that when you do it, you lose track of time because you really want to do this? Every conversation you have, you tend to gravitate towards this topic because that's how your brain works. That's how you think. Any project that you take on for your charity or for your nonprofit organization, you tend to take on these types of roles because you really enjoy it and you're really good at it. And everyone gives you that affirmation. Hey, boy, you should do this for a living, right? Those are the attributes that you need to find. Back to what I was saying earlier, to put in 10,000 hours and to do it and to spend it doing only the things that you have to do and not the things that you want to do, that's a recipe for disaster. You can't sustain that kind of pace. So that's what want to is about. It's finding those things that no matter what, you're going to find a way to do this thing because it's just part of you. You hear a lot of musicians talk about that passion, and there's a lot of romance around being a starving artist, and what that really means is, would you do this thing even if you weren't getting paid?
Yeah, or it's like, what would you like to do? What do you like doing for free?
Yeah, what would you do if you had to do it for free, right? I can tell you right now, I would develop people for free, and I know that for a fact because I've done it, right?
There you go.
Develop people for free. If you come to me and say, hey, Galen, this is the vision of where I'm trying to go, I don't quite know how to get there, you kind of got my attention, right? Because I'm engaged now. That's who I am, and I want to do it. So that's the second step. It's really, really important. It's about finding your motivation and seizing that opportunity.
It's interesting when I've posed that question to individuals about what would you do, what do you like doing for free? It's a lot of people have to. It's a tough question for them. Like they've never been asked that question before.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something about that question. We've gotten to a place where the money that you make has become the objective. Whereas originally it was never intended to be the end product. It was never intended to be the objective. It was always intended to be a measure of the value that you're creating, right? And I think if we get back to what the objective is to reach fulfillment, to reach this level of self-actualization, if you buy into the hierarchy of needs. That's the top of the pyramid, and money is just a measure of how much value you're creating along the way. If you're playing in your wants, if you're playing in your place of passion, then the money becomes less important.
So here's an interesting question coming from Claude Diamond on Periscope. He's saying, why not have both passion and money?
Yes. Hey, making money is never a bad question. How do I make money from this is never a bad question. It's just a bad first question. That should never be the first question. The first question, it should be, what am I really, really good and passionate about doing? And once I find out what I'm really good at doing and passionate about, and I start doing it, the money's going to follow, right? If you're thinking about it the right way, if you're money minded, money focused, it's going to come. And so making money, never a bad question. It's just a bad first question.
Right. And Claude also says, do what you love and the money will follow.
I believe that. I really do believe that.
Excellent. Number 3, it's an interesting word. It's one of the most overused words I hear these days. The old word connect.
Yeah. So that's the third step. And this is really about find an avenue, find a larger group that will allow you to exercise this passion that you found. So you've decided the space that you want to play in. You've got a lot of passion around doing it. You want to do it. And so now you've got to find an avenue that will allow you to exercise your passion with a larger group. And that could be a nonprofit organization. That could be a charity. That could be a church. That could also be within your organization, right? I don't subscribe to this notion that you got to leave your $100,000 corporate job to go follow your dreams and follow your passion. I don't subscribe to that. I think that there could be a way, and you have to think about it, but there could be a way for you to reposition your passion to help the organization deliver against their goals. And if you do that, you're going to have all kinds of opportunities to connect with a larger group in this vein.
It's a side conversation, but I would like you to even address it lightly. Are people equipped in general these days to connect effectively, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think that, and this could be in line with your question, I think that people often think about how do I make, and that's usually their first notion. Even when I got started in this business, I had an opportunity to speak to some, John Maxwell, to Eric Thomas, to Jeff Gitmore. I had an opportunity to ask them a question about, should I do this for free, or should I do this only if I'm paid? Because I was hearing both sides of it. And the three of them both said, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it, right? Mm-hmm. Because in the very beginning, usually you're not good enough to command the money that you're wanting to command. And you need to get practice. You need to build up your hours. So just connect with groups that might need what you have.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. One of the things I repeat a lot or share with a lot of people is credibility leads to profitability.
Yeah, the world will make room for your talent.
Absolutely. Now, in regards to part of the connectivity piece.
Say that one more time. Ask that one more time.
No, but I'm just saying, is relationships part of the connectivity piece?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about it's about thinking broader about your relationships, right? It might not be with the people that you know well, but it may be with their groups. It may be with your tertiary connection groups. But yeah, it's all about creating relationships and showing yourself as a resource.
Good stuff. As a resource and an expert too. There you go.
Exactly. Back to what you were saying, this is where you're building your expertise. Mm-hmm. This is where you're building your expertise. Almost everyone can do things okay. And most of us can do things average, but average doesn't get paid.
I know Claude Diamond would. I hope he responds to that quote, because I know he would say that too. Yeah. Average don't get paid. I love that quote.
I'm not going to pay anyone if they can just kind of do a task. I'm not going to pay anyone if they can do the task just as well as everybody else. I'm only going to pay for the best, and you can't become the best until you have done it time and time again, bumped your head, failed, screwed things up, adjusted, and come back again, right? That's the only way greatness is created in the sweat locker.
Yeah.
Greatness is not created on the field of glory. It's created in the sweat locker.
Nice. Next one up, seize opportunity. And I think this is one a lot of people miss out on.
Yeah. This is about raising your hand and saying, hey, I would like to do this. and knowing that you might not be ready, but getting out there anyway. You know, many times, and I'm going to talk about myself here. I'm working on this, but I have a tendency not to want to show up unless I know that I've got my stuff together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have, and I used to say this a lot early in my career, if before I do any kind of presentation, I've got backup, and I've got backup for my backup, right? And although that level of preparation was good, it stalled my engagement. It stalled me getting involved. It stalled me volunteering for things that I wasn't the absolute expert in yet. So I'm going to say, once you've decided this is the space that you want to be in, once you've got the passion or the want to step into that space and be more than just average, once you've connected with this larger organization, start volunteering.
Yes.
Just start volunteering, offering it up. If you've got a passion for finance, offer to be part of the finance committee. Maybe you're not ready to be the chair of the finance committee.
Exactly.
But
And yeah, and I would say too, put yourself in volunteer opportunities that are bigger than where you're at right now.
yeah, exactly. You know, I'm a growing fan of Kobe Bryant these days. I'm a bigger fan of him after he's retired than I was when he was
Yes.
playing. And I've started studying a lot of his videos. I've started studying a lot of his commentary. And one of the things that I noticed was that early in his career, I think it was the first year of his career, he famously called out Michael Jordan. He didn't call him out, but he's like, I'm going to defend Michael Jordan. And it's like, who in their right mind, their first year in the league, says, I want to guard the number one player on the planet right now? But he sees the opportunity. He's like, I want to see what it takes to get better. I want to see what greatness looks like up front and up close. I'm willing to put my skills and my talents on the line right now, knowing full well that I'm not good enough right now, but I want to see how big the gap is. And that's what this is about.
It's interesting, and this is somewhat a very short example I'll give to myself in regards to the seizing opportunity. A number of years ago, there's a lady who had a number of book writing clients that came on my platform, and she then said, "Hey, I'd like you to come out. I'm doing a charity event about getting, authors getting their message out there, promoting themselves." And I said, "Okay, I'll show up." That's number one. You need to show up. Second of all, there were two ladies from a small PR agency, myself, and this was early in my journey online. And then there was a gentleman who was the news director of one of Canada's national television networks. So I introduced myself to him. We chatted a little bit. We developed a rapport because he loves college football. I love college football. And then the panel went on. And after he finished, I went up to him and said, "Hey, thanks very much for all the knowledge and information." He said, "Dr. Vibe, I can tell you're good at what you do." And I said, "Okay, opportunity, compliment, opportunity." So I immediately asked him, would you be interested in coming on the Dr. Vibe show? He said, "Sure." So he gave me his contact information. When I got home that night, I emailed him. By the time I went to bed that night, it was booked.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a great example, right? And so many people, I think even me in that situation might be reluctant to say, "Hey, I'm not quite ready. This is a big opportunity, but I'm not quite ready."
Oh.
And you're never ready.
No, well, you know what? As I said this to a lady the other day, saying, you don't need to be perfect all the time. You just need to be perfect at the right time.
That's right. That's right.
Simple as that. And just ask. A lot of people have this thing about the no, and a lot of times it's not you personally. It's just maybe not the right time.
That's it. That's it. But you've got to be willing to put your hat in the ring. You've got to raise your hand and say, "I'm willing to step into this. I'm willing to do this poorly, right? In order to learn, in order to get better, because I'm passionate about this space that I believe I was designed to go into."
I'll just add one other thing to that as I just tag along with Galen. If you have an opportunity, back it up with research ahead of time.
Yeah.
A lot of times that separates the winners from the non-winners. Research. Not too many people like to do it, but research comes in very handy.
Yeah. You've got to know your stuff, right? Don't let your qualifications stall you from raising your hand. But when you get the opportunity, yeah, do your homework, right? I mean, don't go into it intending to fail. Do your homework, do the research. To your point, give a good showing. Back to Kobe Bryant, if Kobe Bryant knew that he was going to be the Lakers are going to be playing the Chicago Bulls, and there was a chance that he might guard Michael Jordan, that's not the time for him not to shoot free throws during practice, right?
Exactly.
That's not the time for him to skip out on doing this conditioning, right?
Excellent.
But yeah, I totally agree with you.
Good stuff. Next down the line, get it when it comes.
Get it when it comes. Now this one is a connection to my dad, actually. My dad used to say all these amazing things when I was a kid, like 14, 15, 16 years old. And, dads never have any sense when you're young, right? They absolutely have no idea what they're talking about. But occasionally, my dad would say something absolutely amazing, and it would kind of wake me up. And I'd say, what was that? What did you just say? And his response would be, oh, you got to get it when it comes, because I can't repeat it, right? Uh, Here's the reality. Here's the research. Research suggests that we forget 67% of what we hear in 24 hours. And that's literally backed up by research. So if you hear something that's going to allow you to advance this thing that you believe you were designed to be the greatest in the world at, this thing that you're passionate about, and if you hear something or see something or read something that you believe is going to advance your efforts, you've got to write it down. You can't just think, oh, I'm going to remember that, because you're not going to remember it the same way. You've got to get it when it comes. Great example. Every morning I take my daughter to school. I drive her to school every morning. It's kind of daddy-daughter time. And when I'm traveling, I miss those times. But when I'm in town, I'm the one driving my daughter to school. And so when my daughter to school, and after I dropped her off, we had a great conversation. I dropped her off. I was listening to the radio. There was talk radio on, and the speaker made a comment, and I was like, wow, that's a pretty neat comment. And I see how that might apply to leadership. I think I'm going to go home now and do a video on that topic, because that could really help a lot of people. And I just got home, and by the time I got home, I set up and got ready to shoot my video. And do you know, in the time that it took for me to drive from my daughter's school to home, I had forgotten all of these great connection points that I was making. I still remember the topic, but I forgot all of the connections that I was making, all the nuances. So whenever you hear something that's going to advance this gift that you have to find a way to capture it. And we all walk around with many computers anymore.
Yeah.
So I use my phone to take a voice memo or to write notes. I must have 167 notes in my phone right now, from just small ideas that I've had along the way. And that's how I try to get it when it comes. You talked about my book, my first book. I actually wrote my first book by dumping all of my notes onto a word processor and trying to see how they all fit together. And I found a way for them to fit together, and that's how I wrote my first book. So people ask me, how long did it take you to write your first book? I can't answer that question, because it's a compilation of notes that I've been keeping for years. So my encouragement is the same as my dad's encouragement to a very young me, and that is get it when it comes.
So an interesting conversation piece I want to add to this. In regards to momentum, for those out there, how does calculated risks impact on momentum?
Yeah, we're getting ready to get into momentum, and yeah,
Actually, you know what? I thought, okay, let's get into momentum and we
yeah,
can get to that there. And getting it while it comes, and I just focusing back on getting while it comes. I think another thing too is adding on that, be ready.
yeah,
Be ready.
yeah. So be ready. That has so many different implications to that phrase. Be ready. Number one, be ready to seize the opportunity. But then number two, have some systems and some tools in place
Yeah.
to capture those things when they come.
Yeah.
Uh, I famously have told my wife if she ever asks me to do anything and I don't have my phone with her, then that's a wasted conversation because I'm not going to remember it, right? Because that's the tool that I use to capture those things.
Right.
And you don't have to use your phone. You can use a notepad, but you have to have some system to capture your areas of brilliance when they come. Because if you're going to expect yourself to remember them, you're going to be defying research. You're going to defy research if you're expecting to remember everything that happens to you and put that in place as soon as you get that opportunity.
So listen up, people. Documentation is important. This thing can only hold a finite number of things.
Yes. Hey,
That's why. Go ahead.
there, there's some more research for that as well. There is, I think his name is David Allen, author of the book Getting Things Done. He's talked about this concept of how the brain is analogous to a computer, in that if you run your computer for days and days and days without ever turning it off, there are two types of memory. There is random access memory, and
Ram.
then there's stored memory,
Yep.
right? And your computer uses the random access memory so that if you decide to hit the go back or the undo button, it can complete that task. But the problem is if you keep your computer on for months without ever turning it off, it's trying to remember all these things
That's
that you've
right.
done over months, and the computer doesn't function as well because it's trying to remember all these things. So eventually, I would have problems with my computer, and the IT dude would say, I know exactly what you need to do. You need to turn your computer off. You need to empty your random access memory so it's not trying to remember all
Mhm.
the steps that you've taken, and that will fix the other problems that you're having. And I think your comment is absolutely right. We do a terrible job of depleting and emptying our random access memory. We're trying to remember all this stuff. And that's why we can never achieve greatness, because we're trying to remember what your wife told you to do last Tuesday. You're trying to remember that.
Mm, good stuff. Let's get to Big Mo.
Yeah, Big Mo. This is about momentum. I've got a phrase that I use with all my coaching clients, and it always sounds cruel when I say it. And I'm saying it more often, so I don't feel bad about saying it. But it's this phrase: either do it or stop talking about it. I really don't care which one you choose, right? But to constantly talk about doing it and then not do it, it's a waste of everyone's time. So either
Yeah.
do it or stop talking about it. And so this idea of momentum is really about just getting started. The hardest part of any project is the first step, because after you take the first step, well, then the second step is usually pretty obvious. So you'll probably just go ahead and take the second. And since I've taken the first step and the second step, I might as well take the third step. But it's the first step that's hard. So let's just get started, because once you get started, momentum will create itself, and now all you need to do is just keep the boulder rolling. But getting the ball to roll in the beginning is the hard part.
It's interesting. You mentioned earlier on John Maxwell, and a number of years ago, I had the pleasure and honor of having a 15-minute one-on-one conversation with him. And I asked him, "You've written so many leadership books. Like, how did you get going?" He said, "I just started."
Just start.
It was such a plain, simple answer. And I said, "On it, just started."
Just start. You know, we are never, ever good enough in our minds to get started with anything, right? You know, we always say, well, I need to go get a degree first. After I get my degree, then I'll get started. And then I need to form my own company, right? Once I form my own company, then I'll get started. Well, you know, I don't have the right sales material, right? And the reality is, if you just start, the other things that you need will become obvious, and then you will do those things too. But if you're waiting to line up all the dominoes before you tip the first one, you will never get started. You will never get started. There's always something else that you quote unquote have to do before you can get started doing this thing. My recommendation is that you just start.
It's interesting. I'm mentoring a gentleman now, a father, and he wants to start his own company. And he said, so what's holding you back? He says, money. I said, so after you get the money, you think everything else is gonna be easy? And he just, I never thought about it that way. I told him, don't get good, get done.
Get done, right?
Get done.
Yeah, great is always the obstacle to being good, right? Or being done. You're absolutely right. Well, let's just get started. Yeah. Let's just get started.
Next up, humility.
Yeah. Now, humility. There's a different. I've got a different take on humility than what I had always used throughout my life. And usually, when people say, if someone gives you the advice, Dr. Vibe, you really need to be humble. In your mind, usually we think that means that we need to play down the things that we do well and really own and embrace the things that we need to work on and we need to get better at, and maybe you're not quite up to par. And that's usually what we think about when we think of humility. I believe that humility really is owning the reality of being human. If you own the reality of being human, that means that there are some things that I'm just not good at, right? And I need to own that. I need to find a way to work around these things because I'm not amazing at doing them. Or in order to be adequate, it's going to take so much out of me that I don't enjoy it. That's just part of being human. But the flip side of that is there are some things that I might not be the greatest in the world yet, but I'm one of the top 3 people that you may know, right? At some things. And that's a reality. And I need to own that too. Another piece of research suggests that 67%, 73% of all of your self-talk is negative and self-critical.
It's so interesting you're mentioning. I'm sorry to interrupt, because one of my mentors was on the other day, and he put out an interesting fact that around 65% of the words in a dictionary are negative words.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is really interesting. And it's like there's all this negativity. There is no loss of people that can tell you what you can't do and why you can't do it, right? You can I don't know if there's a phone book anymore, but you can dial 7 digits on any phone and pick up the phone and people will tell you what you can't do and why you can't do it. But if 73% of the thoughts kicking around in your own head are negative and self-critical, so you're telling yourself what you can't do, then how do you have any hope of achieving anything, let alone achieving a level of greatness? So you've got to be mindful of not only the things that you don't do quite as well as you would like. That's a reality. But there are some things that you are doggone good at. And this is probably in line with this thing that you believe you were designed to do. And you got to own your strengths.
It's interesting you say that, because up until a few years ago, at times, and the other day, guy came on and said, you got to own up at this thing. And he basically, in a polite way, took me to task.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, you're good at what you do. You know, he was saying all these things. Oh, you've given me a voice. I haven't had a voice before, and I owned it, and I'm still getting over it a little bit. It's pretty good there, but I've learned to just say thank you and I appreciate it, and that's
Absolutely. Now, it gets a bit problematic if you only own the things that you're good at,
I'll
right?
tell them what I'm not good at too.
This is about a balance. This
Yes.
is about this understanding that I am a whole human and that there are things that I'm not good at and there are things that I'm really good at, and I own both of them. So when I show up trying to help someone, and talk about myself, when I show up trying to help a coaching client or trying to help an organization, I've got a very clear picture of the things that if we start talking about these areas, that's going to be an area that I'm going to really need to dig in deep, because that's not my strength. That's not what I'm really, really good at. I've got an example. There was, when I was in my corporate role, we would do these employee engagement surveys, and everyone would fill in these bubbles, throw on a scale from 1 to 5. How well does the company do X? And fill in these bubbles. And then there were sections at the end where you can put in written comments. And this particular survey, there were 1,200 write-in comments at the end, and 1,200 was pretty significant. And so the senior leadership said, Galen, it's great that we got 1,200 comments, but we don't know, we can't do anything with 1,200 comments. We need you to go through all of these comments, see if there are common themes, and then, give us the themes, and then give us recommendations as to how we might address the themes. Is that something you can do? And I said, well, yeah, I think I can take that on. And I took it on. I read all the comments more than once and kind of tried to understand the themes that might exist. And I massaged it and created a tool that would allow us to sort it using Excel and pull it together. And at the end of the day, we found 9 themes out of 1,200. And not only did I create the 9 themes, I showed the comments that supported each of the themes, so they saw how I got to those themes. And then I gave recommendations as to how we might address each of those 9 themes, and submitted that to the organization. And they said, wow, this is great. Now we understand exactly what the organization is saying, and we know specifically what we can do to address them. And all the time they were giving me these kudos, I was thinking to myself, God, I hope they never, ever ask me to do this again. Because it took absolutely everything out of me.
Right.
Right. And I delivered it, but oh my God, I think I grew 4 gray hairs in my mustache doing that project, because that does not speak to my strength.
Right.
So when I am engaged in a project, I'm now assessing quickly, does this play to my strength? Does this play to my developmental opportunity or to my weakness? Because I need to own both of those equally. I
think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm just thinking here that when you can admit to yourself what you're great at and what you're not great at, it provides you strength. But when you also am honest enough to others, that builds up greatness in their minds about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this doesn't mean that it would be a great world if I were to say, hey, look, I'm not really good at that, so sorry, you're gonna find someone else to take care of that, right? It'd be great if you could do that. I only do the things that I'm great at, right? That would be wonderful, and especially, well, if you're working for someone else, you don't have that luxury. If you're working for yourself, then you really don't have that luxury. But the task then becomes, how do you seize the things that you are great at, and then find a way to delegate or reassign or find resources that would tackle the things that you're not great at, right?
Exactly.
And that becomes the task, knowing that you still have to deliver against the need, but it doesn't necessarily have to be you doing the task.
Exactly. And I think this ties in regards to connecting with people. Because when you connect with people and and realize that there's an area that you can't service them, your connection and your community with people will lead that person to the right individual.
Absolutely. And that is a resource within itself, right? That's an asset within itself. If you know, Dr. Vibe, you're one of the best connectors I've ever come across.
I'm humbled. Thank you.
Especially in this space of video production, telling your story, getting your word out. If you don't know the answer, you know someone who does.
Oh, yeah.
And not only do you know them, but they know you, right? And so the ability to connect people to other resources is an asset within itself. And so
well, it's funny because I did not know about this platform, and it was someone who I had not communicated with for at least a year and a half that told me about this. And I went, okay, so leaving positive residue with people is very important.
Fantastic.
I wanted to use the residue because I know that's part of the words you use in your journey. So I was thinking about that. Leaving positive residue is very important.
Fantastic. That's it, man. That's it exactly.
Excellent. Next up, brace yourself.
Brace yourself. Now, this one is often uncomfortable. So think about this journey that we're on. We've decided that being average is not good enough, that we're going to shoot for greatness. Not only are we shooting for greatness, but we've got the audacity to say, hey, look, I want to see if I can be the greatest in the world at this thing. And then you've started volunteering. You've started connecting with people. You started seizing opportunities to exercise this talent that you have. You're taking your notes. You're building momentum. You're owning the things that you are good at and the things that you're not so good at. And now you're showing up. And so now because this type of inspiration is going to cause people to want to hate on you. They're going to get uncomfortable with this newfound energy that you have. You're going to have a lot of people saying, who does he think he is? It don't take all of that. Come on now. Dr. Vibe, you don't have to be on every platform. Come on now. Everybody's on just Facebook. Isn't Facebook good enough for you? Why do you got to be on Get Vocal and Periscope? No, you don't need all of that. Just do your thing. And that's what you're going to find. And if you're not careful, if you don't go into this with your eyes open, you're going to start thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe it doesn't take all. Maybe I am being extra, as the kids are saying right now. Maybe it doesn't require. Who am I to think that I could be the greatest in the world at this thing anyway? Maybe I should just go ahead and settle in and do what everyone else is doing. If you're not careful, you're going to start thinking that the criticism that you're hearing is feedback, when in actuality, criticism and feedback are two totally different things. Criticism is meant to tear you down. Criticism is meant to erect roadblocks. Criticism is meant to get into your psyche. Feedback is intended to build you. Feedback is usually accompanied with suggestions and recommendations as to how you can get better. Feedback is usually accompanied with a definition of what greater looks like. If someone is giving you advice and they can't tell you what greater looks like, then it's probably not feedback.
That's a good breakdown. I tell people with this in regards to brace yourself, accept the crazy because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And also motion causes friction.
It really does. I love that. I love that because people get uncomfortable when they see other people achieving.
Yes.
What you're doing in this space is you're messing up the curve of what average looks like. You're redefining average, and people get uncomfortable with that.
It's interesting. There was a book I read many years ago called An Enemy Called Average.
Yeah. Average is comfortable. Your average is where all your friends are, right? Everybody wants to hang out with their friends. So average is where your friends are. But if you're performing at this higher level and other people watch you perform at this higher level and they're able to join you in this higher level of performance, then all of a sudden what used to be average that I was comfortable with that's going to be below average because now the distribution curve is moving. And if more people start performing at this higher level, now my average is antiquated. I don't want to be antiquated.
Yeah.
And I don't want to change what I'm doing. So I'd rather shoot you down to make sure that you stop this crazy greatness performance.
Yeah.
Come on back with the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, and I encourage people, never settle.
That's it. That's it.
Never settle. Never settle. Well, we reached the last one. OYO standard.
Yeah, the OYO standard. And OYO stands for own your own standard. And that means that you have to decide that you define what greatness looks like. Mm-hmm. And that your company doesn't define how well you're going to do this task. Your manager doesn't define how well you're going to do this task. And this is going to sound crazy, but your client doesn't even define how well you're going to do this task. If this task is associated with your passion and this thing that you believe you were created to be the greatest in the world at, you're going to do this task as well as you possibly can, regardless of who's involved, regardless of who's watching, because you own that. And that one really rubs up against the last one that we talked about, where you're talking about bracing yourself, because that's going to create a lot of friction, right? If the boss says that you're supposed to turn in 100, and because this space is in your area of greatness, you turn in 215, you're going to get a whole lot of folks that are upset at you, right? If you're a student and the teacher is talking about your area of expertise, your area of greatness, and the student and the teacher says, we're going to assign homework when this is over, and she doesn't assign homework, and you remind her to assign homework, that's the best way to create enemies in your classroom. But your classmates don't set your standard. You set your standard. You have to own your own standard of greatness. I told you about my newfound admiration for Kobe Bryant. And there was a quote that I saw that he supposedly said, where he says, don't compete with anyone, because once you compete, then you've already decided that that other person is worth competing against. So he's not competing against anyone. He's competing against himself and how great he believes he can be. And that's what the last one's about. Own your own own your own standard.
I just want to add on to what Galen said there. One of my major mentors is Mary Armstrong, and he did a podcast today that was so on it. And he was encouraging his community, and I encourage the people listening, do not limit your potential. A lot of people don't want to share their potential. And he said, when you're limiting your potential, you're limiting your possibilities.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I have a theory as to why so many people will fall into that area. If I show up as well as I can, that creates an expectation that you can count on me to deliver that again. And many people are afraid of the responsibility of greatness. And that is one of the biggest, as a matter of fact, the biggest barrier to any of the things that we've talked about over the last hour is fear. It's fear. And as crazy as it sounds, most people are afraid of success.
Even people who are successful have fear in them, but they go do it. Like you said, they go for it.
They go do it. But many people are afraid of success. They're afraid of the responsibility of being successful. I've got my daughter. I can't let a conversation go.
I know that, and I hope she's doing fine.
Yes. So my daughter is passionate about math. She's passionate about art. She's passionate about soccer. She's passionate about Bruno Mars.
Interesting mix.
I don't know how I feel as a
Yeah.
dad, but all right. But she's got so she's playing soccer and she just really loves it. And she's got um, a person on her soccer team who is just a natural athlete. I mean, oh my gosh, she goes out on the soccer team. She's one of the best soccer players. She goes out on the basketball team. She's one of the best basketball players. She goes out on the track. She's setting records, in track, right? And you ask her, hey, where would you like to go with this? Nowhere. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to raise my hand. I don't want to be the one to take the penalty kick. Well, if you take the penalty kicks, we could probably. Hey, I don't want to be. I don't want to. She's got this talent, but I don't know that she has the want to raise her hand and say, "Hey, look, I'm the one that needs to take this shot because I'm just that good," right? And it's a fear of success. It's a fear of greatness, and fear will seduce you into being average when you don't need to be. Fear will seduce you into sabotaging other people who are trying to reach greatness. Fear will seduce you into not raising your hand when this is something you said you always wanted to do.
All right.
So yeah.
Well, my man, I know you've got many things on the go, so I appreciate you taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us. Any last words, and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the last words, I believe wholeheartedly two things. Number one, I believe that everyone was designed to be the greatest in the world at something. That was your design. That's why you were created. That's why everything was put into one person. All of your education, all of your successes, all of your failures, all of your everything was put into one person for you to be the greatest in the world at something. So find your thing so that you can get on with being the greatest in the world at your thing. And then the second thing is I believe that every success and every failure begins and ends with leadership. And if you are affecting other people, regardless of your title, if you are inspiring others, then I call that leadership. If you are just focused on your own gifts, your own development, your own career, I call that personal excellence. Well, personal excellence is also leadership. So that's it for me. You can get a hold of me go to my website, www.galenbingham.com. YouTube channel, Galen Bingham Inspires, Facebook, almost anywhere you put in my Google, Google my name and you'll find opportunities. You can find opportunities to connect with me. And hopefully, if nothing else from this broadcast, you have learned that I am really, really passionate about helping people find their greatness and to realize that in their own.
Well, thank you again. Much love to you and your family and your journey. We're always here to support you in any way. And definitely Galen will be back on soon when he has a few moments, because he's always got a lot of things on the go. I have a feeling the next time you'll hear from him on the Dr. Vibe Show, Home of Epic Conversations, is talking about the big retreat coming up. So we're definitely looking forward to that. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the Home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations. Do note that I was the 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. If you want to find out more information about me, easiest place is to go to the website, drvibeshow.com. Got a number of things in the working stage we're working on to expose to you in the near future, but we're going to keep those things quiet because I like to announce when things are a reality. So that is good. So as I always say, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. I'd like to thank Claude Diamond, Serena Wills, and everyone else who watched this live or watch it on the replay or listen to it live or on the replay. God bless, peace to all, keep the faith and walk good. Follow me on Twitter at drvibeshow, and you'll keep up to date on more epic conversations to come. God bless, peace to all, keep the faith and walk good.